Hello and welcome to a new episode. Our guest today is Luis Baez, a revenue enablement strategist and sales coach dedicated to serving executives, sales leaders, and businesses. In 2017, after years of working in some of the biggest Silicon Valley startups, think LinkedIn, Google, Uber, Tesla, and more, Luis began to teach business owners how to scale their revenues. Today, we are going to talk about navigating new spaces and experiences as a first or outsider, and of course, about Luis' career. Hi, Luis, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Elisa.
So, let's start with your background, as we always do. And we are curious to know what was your dream job when you were a child?
I wanted to be a pilot. That was
Oh.
my biggest dream. I wanted to travel the world, but I wanted the very front seat.
Ah, that's nice. Yes, it would be ideal. Uh, so I guess it didn't go that way. And
No, unfortunately, I was discouraged at a very young age, and I also use glasses, corrective lenses, so I can't qualify for commercial flying.
oh no. So then I guess you went to school. How was your relationship with school and what did you decide to study?
I was the very first person in my family to ever pursue a like university education, and I wanted to study medicine and law and business, but I ended up studying sociology. It was the right spot for me, and it worked for both sides of my brain.
I love sociology. Good
Yes.
choice. So then how did you start your professional life or better, what was your first job?
After graduating school, my very first job was as a paralegal at a nonprofit law firm, working with clients that were living in poverty in New York City and needed legal help navigating things like housing issues and healthcare coverage and things like that. It was very important for me to use my education to advance other people, but I burned out doing that work very quickly.
Mm, that sounds really, really nice to have a job that give you feeling of purpose. And also quite a big job to be a first job. How did you progress your career after that? You say that you felt burnout. What happened?
I ended up leaving that job and becoming an assistant to a judge. And during that experience, I went to law school part time, but I hated it. I was so unhappy. The hours were very long and the material was very boring. After working in law and practicing the law or putting it to use, it's a very different approach to take a step back and study it. And I didn't enjoy it. And a friend of mine was working in tech in the marketing department at WebMD. And she said to me, I think that you have this gift of just pulling people in and earning trust and telling really good stories. I wonder if sales might be for you. And
Hmm.
so she submitted my resume. The company invited me to interview. I knew nothing about the corporate world. I knew nothing about ad tech or ad sales or anything like that. And after 8 rounds of interviews, I got the job. And so it confirmed for me, if nothing else, my ability to sell myself.
Wow. And so you discovered something about yourself too, exactly.
Yeah.
So then how did you work for big companies? So I guess that experience in sales proved to be very successful. How did you progress from that?
Yeah. I was living and working in New York City, and I was working for the British Broadcasting Corporation. They had just launched BBC America.
Oh,
I was part
wow.
of the ad sales team that kicked off in the States. And I had an opportunity to continue with the company or move on. And I decided to move on. And I took the severance package and I moved to California on a whim. I knew nobody. I didn't have a car. I didn't have a job. I just figured it out as I went along. And after spending a lot of time on LinkedIn, networking and looking for opportunities, a recruiter from LinkedIn reached out to me and said, you seem to know our platform. We would love for you to come and teach our customers how to leverage the platform for their businesses. And so that's how I was able to get into the tech scene in Silicon Valley in California about 6 months after moving to California. And then after that, because I continued to use LinkedIn and to its full potential, I ended up attracting recruiters at other companies. And so I was recruited to Google. where I did enterprise sales. I was recruited at Uber and I was also recruited at Tesla, which is where I got my first experience as a sales leader.
Mm. And it seems it was destiny because why did you choose California based on you wanted to go to the beach or?
Yeah, it was, yeah, the sunshine, the wine, the vibes, the career opportunity, the lifestyle. I spent 29 years in New York City. I partied, all the rooftop parties, all the warehouse parties, all the Broadway shows, all the fine dining experiences. I had my fill of it.
Okay.
And I am from the Caribbean. My family and I are from Puerto Rico, and I just always wanted to just be closer to nature as far as my lifestyle. And so California, being in California and living in Northern California gives me that balance of I can be in a very big city when I want to be, or I can be in the middle of nowhere when I need to be.
What did you gain from all these great experiences in the tech world, if you could say that in a few words?
Gosh, I gained perspective, certainly, on how to build and nurture and grow a business and a team and an entire function within the company. I've had amazing experiences, and I think that all of it is really added up to dreams come true because I've had my dream job a few times. But I think for me, it's also a realization of just my own power, my own capabilities, and my own magic. Right. I think that all the experiences that I've had have very stretched me to my fullest. And in that process, I came out a different person out of each and every experience, a finer, sharper, and refined executive each step of the way.
Mm. And so, what was the exact moment where you started to think that you also wanted to help other people, entrepreneurs, and share the knowledge and skills that you have learned?
Yeah, it happened accidentally, actually. I was using LinkedIn, harnessing the all the keyword strategies and all the things, all the features and all the ways of networking and really amplifying my own personal brand and attracting recruiters and working at top companies. And friends and people in my network started tapping my shoulder and saying, "Hey, Luis, could you help me use LinkedIn for my own development and to land my next job?" And so enough people started asking me where I said, "Okay, I can't do this. I don't have enough time." And so I started putting a buy button on my time. And I did that enough times until I started getting taps on my other shoulder where it was like, "Hey, Luis, how is it that you're working full time and managing a business part time, helping other people? Like, teach me how to do that. I could use additional income, right?"
Yeah.
And so I pivoted into helping solopreneurs start their own ventures. And I did that to the tune of launching online programs. I've had at this point tens of thousands of students go through my programs. I started a group coaching program. I brought hundreds of entrepreneurs together and teaching them to build their own sort of revenue engines for themselves. I've done this work and I've loved it. And I've pivoted now in my own career away from being a seller and an individual contributor or a sales leader and managing a sales team. Now I work in revenue enablement. And so I step into businesses, whether I'm stepping in as an executive of that business or as a consultant of that business, and I help train leaders on how to be better coaches, how to implement sales playbooks, and how to develop teams that are high performing and inclusive.
Mm.
And it's just an evolution of, again, I just was doing what I was doing, people tapping my shoulder and asking for advice. And then I leaned into the opportunity to keep growing from there.
That's great. So your experience in changing career and going into environments and places where you've never been before, you've been there as a first, or maybe sometimes you may feel a little bit of one outsider. So let's try to talk about this topic. What does it mean to enter into the startup world and being an outsider? So you work in the biggest Silicon Valley startups, you've encountered different environments. What was your first experience when stepping into that world?
Yeah. I remember being very excited. Part of what attracted me to work in Silicon Valley is that I am an out gay man of color, and I worked in environments that were these really intense and environments as far as being sales pressure cookers. but also being environments where women and queer people and people of color were not safe. And so there was this promise of stepping into the businesses in Silicon Valley and having safer spaces that really celebrated global views in the ways that customers were served and the way that products were designed. And so that's what attracted me. And I remember showing up for my first couple of weeks at work at LinkedIn and just being a sponge because I was not used to that level of respect and autonomy, right? I was used to being micromanaged and drilled at every turn. I was used to being spoken down to as opposed to being addressed as the expert of the business that I'm running, right? And it was a real shift in mindset and self concept and in self confidence that I had to go through to adjust to the culture of Silicon Valley and adjust to the culture of tech. And so that's like openness that I just had not experienced previously, but it was the thing that I was looking for. I was looking for a healthier environment where I could be more productive and grow and advance my career, right? I also worked in environments that invested in their employees and coaching and training and enabling them. And of course, world class sort of benefits, right? I've worked at companies like Google, which have this reputation for spoiling their employees. And I now know what that feels like working at some of the best places, right? I think the other sort of thing that I had to grapple with was just bringing all of my intersectional identity into the workplace very comfortably, having been traumatized from previous experiences where I had to filter parts of myself at work and feeling safe and comfortable bringing all of that sort of front and center and having experiences where that promise of safety wasn't aligned. I had experiences where I was made to feel as an outsider or othered or diminished, and having to navigate those sort of difficult experiences by leaning into my network and my resources.
Mm. So, based on both your practical skills, your knowledge about sales, and also the experience you went through to be new in different environments, you're coaching executive and sales leaders that may be new to the business world. How do you approach coaching someone who is new to this process?
Yeah. I invite them to let go of what they think a leader should be. Right. I think we have so many examples in the media and in history and examples in pop culture and things like that, where we see this very tyrannical approach to leadership. I tell you what you do, you behave like a good employee, right? And so I have to, when I'm working with the leader, invite them to create a different environment where each and every person who surrounds them is a stakeholder in the business, a leader in the business. And rather than you managing them, they're managing you, right? They're coming to you and letting you know the exact resources they need, the doors that they need help opening, the meetings that they need scheduling, etc. Right? I invite people to give other folks that autonomy and that trust, and then take it away or adjust based on performance. And then I invite people to consider that coaching is not about telling the person what to do, but pulling the answer out of them so they develop the confidence in making decisions for themselves. That's also part of the shift that I go through with leaders.
Mm. And what strategies can business owners use to scale their revenues effectively, especially if they are entering uncharted territory?
Yeah. I always invite people, especially business leaders or owners, you have to find your salesperson number two. You are number one. You own the narrative, the story, what makes the customer happy. You have to translate all of that knowledge and all of that energy to the next person in a way that scales as your business scales. You have to allow yourself the capacity to expand within your business. That way, your business itself can expand.
Mm. So let's talk about building rapport and trust, something that is essential to create a business or also for people wanted a better career, but quite difficult to do when they are unknown or they are entering a market that is new to them. What advice do you give to sales professional business owners entering a market where they don't have any experience of?
Yeah. The best thing you can do is listen actively, right? Take a moment to really take note of what people are talking about in the industry, the things that are keeping them up at night, the sort of articles and things that they're commenting on. I think developing your sort of confidence in the knowledge and the conversation that's happening is step one. The next step is being confident in the way that you naturally show up for a conversation, whether you wait to be invited or whether you interject, that will define your strategy, right? Whether if you're the type of person that wants to be invited to a conversation, then you have to be that beacon and that magnetism versus whether you're comfortable jumping into a conversation, then that's about just becoming active in the industry, whether it's virtually engaging in conversations on platforms like LinkedIn or in person by attending conferences or by being where your customers are.
Mm. And what is the best way to build authentic relationships with potential clients or partners?
Yeah. Again, that's a matter of how comfortable you are. I'm very comfortable networking on LinkedIn, right? There's nothing to lose. I'm behind the screen. I
Yeah.
won't see you rejecting me. It won't hurt if it happens, right? I shoot messages out all day long. I invite people to conversations and I ask for advice. That's the important thing. I don't sell, I don't push, I invite. I take a moment and I say, I see that you are working on this and that, would love your advice on how you got started in this direction.
Mm.
That is going to be less of a threat to a person versus you coming and asking for something like a job or an introduction, and they'll be more likely to respond and offer you that advice.
Mm.
Then, if like in person is your thing, then yeah, I think that it's just a matter of figuring out where is your tribe, where are they hanging out, where are they spending time, and then allocating your resources to being there.
Mm. So do you think it's important to identify the right people for you and not just go everywhere and to everyone?
Yeah, no one has the time or the resources to be everywhere. And we want to be really strategic and thoughtful. And I think in this day and age, the way that people are approached is that there's so much information that exists out there, right? If you're going to knock on my door, you should know something about me, or you should have a reason for being relevant to me in that moment. If you can draw a connection as to like why we should engage,
Mm.
I'm going to pay more attention versus, hey, I'm just here, want to talk. It's a very different vibe.
Yes, I like that. And so, what is, in your opinion, the role of empathy in this case, even if we're talking about sales? How can empathy help outsiders or people that are starting in a new environment connect with others?
Yeah. I think that empathy requires you to be considerate of someone else or pour your energy into someone else without any attachment to reciprocity. I think that's the important thing is there's the saying in the States here, you attract flies with honey, right? You attract, people
Uh,
by being sweet.
yeah.
So if you think about that opportunity for you to, as you're developing your network and building out, pour into people, the people who see you and appreciate you and are aligned with you will reciprocate. You then focus on nurturing those relationships.
Mm.
And I want to give a special shout out to anyone that might be listening who's an introvert, because I certainly am, right? When I step into a networking space or a new workplace, I tend to observe. I tend to observe. I try to figure out, who do I naturally feel like I might be inclined to connect with? And then I figure out a way to introduce myself or introduce myself into the conversation, right? I'm very selective in that way. And I look for people that naturally amplify the people around them,
Mm.
right? So my sort of like way of building relationships is not to blanket the whole room, but start in one corner and then build from there.
So, do you have any memorable introduction or icebreakers that you used in a specific situation, maybe where you were feeling a little bit out of place?
Gosh, I used to do something with my teams where like on Friday mornings we would have check-ins or whatever, and I'd ask everyone for their shower song. What song were you playing while you were in the shower this morning? What was your hype up song, your wind down song, whatever your vibe is for that Friday? And I find that's always a fun way. Music and food are such amazing connectors. between people. So whenever I can find that opportunity for people to just share their preferences, that's the best way to like naturally draw people in.
Mm. And I guess you're a mentor because you're helping other people to progress in their life, in their careers, and to achieve their goals. So, in your opinion, how can aspiring entrepreneurs or professionals find mentors who guide them? A mentor that is right for them when they are going through unfamiliar terrain.
Yeah, I think that we live in a day and age where there are so many paywalls to mentors, right? You have to be in the same program as them, be in the same mastermind as them, be in the same clubs or circles and networks as them. But there are people who genuinely want to expand themselves and know that they do that by expanding other people around them. So I want to invite people to ignore the paywalls and just reach out directly to the people that you most admire, the people who are doing the things that you want to be doing, living the lifestyle that you want to live, surrounded by people you want to be surrounded with, right? There has to be a real intention. It can't just be like, oh, you're just a popular name in my industry, and I feel like I should just be aligned with you as a mentor. That person might not be your person. They might actually be a jerk, right? You never know. I've had that experience. I've met my legends and I've been disappointed. And so I always say that I think that energy it always attracts the same energy. And so think about those people who are aligned with your values, doing the things that you want to do and live the way that you want to live, and reach out to them for advice. I think the best thing that you can do to impress anyone in any situation, whether it's relationship building or selling or anything, number one thing in psychology is a person will like you more if you take a lot of interest in them. And
Mm.
so if you're reaching out to someone that you want to mentor you, reach out to them and just ask for advice, ask for perspective, ask for their pearl of wisdom. Don't ask for their mentorship outright. And certainly don't try to sell them to give you attention to your pitch or anything and try to give you advice in that way. I think if you can get to the core of like why you admire this person, I admire the work that you've done in this area. I admire the way that you show up in these spaces and I want to grow myself in that direction. What advice do you have for someone like me who's three steps behind you?
Mm.
Asking questions in that vein will get you better results.
Mm. And thinking about sales, for me, what comes up is the ability to deal with rejection and many no's. How do you think is important to build up that resilience? And what is the best way to do that without feeling discouraged?
I have a sort of like inner narrative. When I get rejection from someone, I'm like, you know what? That's cool. I've been rejected by people that are more important than you. This doesn't hurt that much. And it's true. I have DM'd my favorite celebrities and they've never responded to me. You, random person who isn't my favorite celebrity, your rejection doesn't hurt as much as rejection from my favorite people, right? And it's important to frame it that way because the reality is that sales is 95% rejection,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Everyone wants to focus on success and they think that success looks a certain way. But no, you have to actually be comfortable sitting in that murk and that muck of 95% of your energy is going to be rejected. When
Mm,
you do connect with people, then, right, there's this inclination to become so desperate because you've waited to finally connect with someone. But you also cannot be attached to the outcome. That person might waste your time. They might lie to you. They might suck up your energy, right? You still have to do your due diligence and connecting with that person and making sure there's alignment. And so I invite people to not sell. Instead, just have conversation
mm.
and have a moment to explore what it is that that person is going through, what it is that they need, and assess for yourself if it's the right place to be.
Yeah, that sounds really nice. Different approach.
Yeah.
And I think we all need it, all the people that have to do with sales. I think this is a great reminder because rejection is something that no human being enjoys.
Yeah. Yeah. But remind yourself, you've been rejected by people that are more important than that person in the email.
Yeah. So we're reaching the end of this episode, but we still have a few more questions. So first of all, what advice would you give to someone stepping into a new environment for the first time based on your experience?
Expand, don't contract, right? When you're stepping into a new space, you have to step in with the assurance that you were invited because you belong there. And don't filter yourself, don't make yourself small, don't diminish. Expand when you show up in that space and let the right people gravitate towards you.
Oh, that's beautiful. You couldn't say that any better. So if anyone is interested in getting in touch with you, where and how they can find you?
They can certainly hang out with me on LinkedIn. That's where I spend my time.
Ah,
But you
yes.
can also
You mentioned that.
but you can also check out all of my content, all my freebies and my programs at learnfromluis.com.
Yes, and now the last question, really. If you could give yourself a piece of advice, what would you say to your younger self?
Start now. I think a lot of the things that I'm pursuing are in alignment and they've always been on my heart. But gosh, I wish I started 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I wonder where I'd be. So
No.
that'd be my advice to my younger self. Start now.
Thank you so much, Luis, for joining us today and sharing your inspirational story and also your wisdom with our listeners.
Thank you so much for having me, my friend.
And a last message for our listeners, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review and tune in next week for a new inspirational episode of The Career Changers. Thank you.